Oh boy, a new season of My Adventures of Superman. You mean My Adventures with Superman, isn't it? Anyway, that cartoon, that's sort of the manga, or anime rather, Superman, and all the cyberpunk versions of his classic villains and whatnot. But for what it was, I didn't mind it as much. It had its moments, and I was expecting to absolutely hate it, and well, I didn't. So, you know, it's not the Superman cartoon I would have liked, but a lot of the thinking, I'm sure, is to change it up to make it fresh and different when you're telling the same story over and over again. And I assume that's the approach and what have you. But anyway, and oh boy, I'm not going to play the trailer. You can check it out. But there is some clues as to, hey, who could the blonde girl be with the cape, huh? So I guess she'll show up too, you know. And so it's fine. I'm wondering how I'm guessing that this counts as the Elseworlds product, like the Batman and Lois and Superman show, which unfortunately ends with its final season. And is this cartoon only going to get 2 seasons? You know, unless this is based on this is how James Gunn's Superman will be. It'll be based on that. And look, the symbol's almost the same, where it's just a line through it. Now, first of all, David Cornsweet is not the voice of this character, because that was the idea. At least that's what he said at the outset, that everything will be connected, and any future animated versions of Superman would necessarily be voiced by David Cornsweet, as it's the same character, just in another medium. So there is that, but would there be any similarities or not? Well, I don't know. But anyway, again, it didn't bother me as much as I thought it would, and yeah, I will check it out and see how this see how this goes. Meanwhile, over at the MCU, the X-Men are on the way. Oh wait, the X-Women are on the way. So the rumor, and it's not hard to believe it, because that seems to be the ever present direction for it all, despite certain obvious failure. So the idea is the emphasis would be more on the female characters of the X-Men rather than the team as a whole. So the rumor comes via scooper Daniel RPK, who offers Marvel wants to hire a writer who can do comedy and drama really well. Comedy. Well, it's the first time for everything, so I guess if they can find one. But to turn X-Men into a feminist comedy? Anyway, he claims Marvel doesn't want the X-Men to be purely comedic. Oh, well. It also said Marvel wants to focus on the female characters. It's further said Marvel wants to introduce characters that haven't appeared in live action to be alongside the main characters we all know and love. Gee, I wonder what those characters could be. Then again, are they going to gender swap some of the male characters? You know, I mean, they do have plenty of female characters. One of the things the MCU had a problem it had at the outset was they didn't have access to some of their better, well-known female superheroines, especially these two here. Well, all 3 of them, really, and because they were all X-Men characters. So that was over at Fox. So you couldn't have Phoenix and Storm and Rogue, who were all very popular characters within the Marvel comics and whatnot, because being part of the X-Men and whatnot. But, well, they didn't have the rights to it, so they were scrambling around, and that's how, Ms. Marvel became Captain Marvel, and she had to be their Wonder Woman and all that, and it really didn't pan out. But especially since the original female Captain Marvel was this woman right here. That's right. But, yeah. Anyway, so, yeah, totally believable. I mean, look what they're doing at the Fantastic Four. Silver Surfer's got to be the Silver Surfette. Maybe there'll be a male Silver Surfer in there. There's some multiverse shenanigans afoot. But the other rumor is the Fantastic Four would focus on Sue Storm, and that Reed Richards would be something of an a-hole, and she would be the one that's the real leader, and all that sort of stuff. It sounds really bad, and it's the same old rinse, lather, repeat templates they use. So emphasis on female characters at the expense of the male characters, who will be either outright evil or bumbling idiots, and if only they'd listen to the women, the world would be saved. Something of that nature, to the detriment of the lore, which you probably won't get at all, and that's to be expected. The real shocking thing would be that it doesn't do that at all, but what are the odds? What are the odds? Well, another rumor about a plan they might have is the Avengers versus X-Men. This is something that's supposed to take place after Secret Wars. Now, Secret Wars, of course, is coming and will be their reboot. So which X-Men will they be facing? And for that matter, what Avengers will be facing them? So after Secret Wars, and if it truly is a reboot, you might get a new introduction. A new introduction of characters you've already seen. New Captain America, new Iron Man, maybe even new Spider-Man, some suggesting Miles Morales will replace him. New Hulk, new Black Panther would be something they should have done already, but, they did, so. New Black Widow, all that, and then a new cast of X-Men, which would mostly be women. So Wolverine, if he's there at all, it might be a woman, or just shoved to the side. Cyclops, maybe they'll keep him around to get his balls kicked and then throw him away. And everybody else, they're all women. Probably not Psylocke because she's too sexy. But anyway, just the appeal of it and the excitement of that, well, I could understand. It's too bad they couldn't have done something like that, but due to the rights situation, the opportunity had passed because it wasn't available. But now that they have control of both franchises, they could do it. But if they do it suddenly like that, I think that would be a problem, because then you get into Batman versus Superman territory. A scenario of Batman versus Superman would have worked much better had they had let their fledgling shared universe breathe and exist. And it just had one movie, and then all of a sudden you jump into, what's essentially like the Avengers or something. That's not how Marvel did it. And saying, we're doing it different. You're doing it wrong. Even though they're classic and famous characters of Superman and Batman, this iteration of them, this version of them, the groundwork for it really wasn't there. So it comes across as very forced, because it was. And that's one of the main problems with it. There are other problems, of course, but nevertheless, that approach here, where you have no doubt, an all new cast, maybe one or two will survive Secret Wars into the new Marvel universe. And if that's the situation, you have that problem with brand new versions of these characters. So apparently Magneto is going to be very, very important in Secret Wars. Him being very, very important in a scenario where the Avengers take on the X-Men, I could see that. Where Magneto, of course, originally was just absolute evil. But then later on, they kind of just, he's misunderstood. He's very aggressive. And he's troubled, and the X-Men are like, we'll deal with him, you guys back off. And they said, no way, Magneto's a terrorist. And that sparks a conflict between them. And you could see something of that nature, and Magneto being at the heart of it. So that could work as a story in and of itself, and from the X-Men and Avengers narratives. But again, suddenly dropping it in there. So to me, that if this was an idea that it would suddenly follow Secret Wars, but if they did just an Avengers movie with the Avengers take on a villain of some sort, and then the X-Men are introduced and they take on a villain of some sort, probably Magneto, And then you have a movie then of Avengers versus X-Men, of them coming together and establishing the whole business of the X-Men are distrusted by humanity and that sort of thing. And that plays into it all. And that could work, but that would be down the road a while. Can the MCU survive until then? Probably not, especially since, well, it'll just be Storm and a couple other gals and some guys in the background. And God knows what the Avengers will be by then. So, if nothing else, the timing would need to be right. And to suddenly throw that in there right after Secret Wars, I don't know. I wouldn't think that would be a good idea. Provided Secret Wars is a success, and that seems unlikely at the moment. Because the movies leading up to it don't sound that great, you know. So anyway, but no doubt something of this nature is in the works. And McCloy does make mention of the late Mikey Sutton, said he had heard about this some time back. And it stands to reason. It's an idea that would make sense to pursue. It's just a matter of the execution, I would think. So anyway, X-Men. The only other thing was, what was it? Superman. Gunn. There was this interview with Nathan Fillion saying that that Gunn had told him about the Guy Gardner casting a long time ago at the premiere of Suicide Squad. No, not Suicide Squad. Yeah, Suicide Squad, but James Gunn said no, it was at the Guardians of the Galaxy premiere, which was much later. And that this proves James Gunn knew all along about the plan of taking over DC. That doesn't really fit because Hamada was still in charge, and his reboot of DC was underway, and he didn't want Cavill and Ben Affleck back. So then that changes after the merger. Abdi and DeLuca, they were in favor of Cavill and Affleck coming back as Batman and Superman and that sort of thing. But then Zaslav ruled in favor of Gunn taking over with this Superman script that he had been working on. But it sounds like, and he's stated this, that it would have been this separate project akin to like Matt Reeves' The Batman, or even Todd Phillips' The Joker. So you could have, that sort of thing. And it might have been just a one-off had it gone that way. And don't know which version, if anything, if he was even fully aware of what the overall shared universe would be. Whereas his Superman might not have been a shared universe. Who knows? But that's the mess that Warner Brothers and DC was in, with 3 different versions for how the Flash movie would turn out. Where Henry Cavill's back and he's standing with Supergirl, then he's not, and Ben Affleck's back in another timeline, which would lead into his own movie. Nah, never mind. And before that was Supergirl and Batgirl would take over, and then finally you get George Clooney and tee-hee, and it's over. Meanwhile, the other aspects of the story is that Dwayne Johnson has all but been confirmed that he was trying to take over DC himself. And it seems to be that Henry Cavill felt he was screwed over by his own management in that this was not a done deal. And so he was tricked into embarrassing himself by announcing he was back when he wasn't. And, of course, nobody was in really, other than Zaslav himself, I suppose, at that time, for saying anything definitively of where this was going. So it still comes back down to picking James Gunn because people think he's the Marvel guy, and he is one of the foundational guys from the peak and success years of Marvel. But that doesn't necessarily mean he's magic or anything. But they apparently are happy with the script. Plus, I'm sure he's figured out a way to do it on the cheap, which is probably looked very good with Zaslav. And the deal with Peter Safran doing the business part of the deal is probably what made it easier for him to take it. Well, that's what he said, and that sort of thing. So how much is he lying about and all this sort of thing. Well, in this aspect, I don't think so. So that's about it. And of course, Cavill fired his management. Almost immediately after this. So I don't know. But again, I think people were trying to take advantage of the mess. That was a bit of a situation of flux there with Warner Brothers and DC, and they thought they had a shot at this. Interestingly enough, the Black Adam film is one of the final DCEU films that actually did pretty well compared to the others, which were failures, with the exception of Aquaman 2, of course. But Aquaman 2 had access to the Chinese market, and Black Adam didn't. Had Black Adam had the Chinese market, it might be a different story. But it didn't. So anyway, there you go. Rumors and stuff about DC and Marvel. Plus, there's a picture of him hanging out with John Ostrander, one of the great comic book writers and developers. Actually, I think he came up with Guy Gardner, I believe. Or no, Mr. Terrific. That's who. Yeah, they're talking about that, and he posted this picture. And the point is that he really does have interest in the DC universe as opposed to, yeah. So anyway, there you go.